Chicago, Chicago, that toddling town, Chicago, Chicago, I'll show you around. The corner with our magic, our music, our politics. I was raised that tribal dances and Maakmaah and spoke out of different quarters. Power to the people. Six shots, you don't know right down, talking about shot down. Six shots,
Welcome, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
This is Giziribtah Debasah. Welcome to another episode of the Sunnyside podcast. I'm here today with Kasabez Maakmaah. He's not in this studio with me. He is in sunny Burkina Faso. And we would like to welcome all of you to this episode. As you know, one of the goals that we have here at the Sunnyside is to really promote and highlight organizations that are doing extraordinary things in their local communities. We are networking with grassroots organizations who are cultural, political, activist leaders, again, who are just committed to making their societies better. And hence, that's where our name came from, Sunnyside. Because if you look at especially in the major cities that we live in, there is so much blight in those areas where we also have to recognize and give credence to those who are taking those extraordinary steps to bring the sunny side of their situations. So with that being said, we're going to kind of take a little bit of a pause because we have been in the midst of a series of podcasts on community protection. And we've had a few episodes where we highlighted other groups who are other organizations who are promoting what they're doing to offer community protection. And we are going to be talking about that in this episode today. And with that being said, we're going to pass the mic to Kasabez, who's again in Burkina Faso, to give us some very exciting and highlighting news that's taking place there.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Thanks, Giziribtah, for the introduction. Yeah, I'm here in Burkina Faso. It's not sunny. A couple of reasons it's not sunny. First of all, it's 10:30 p.m. Secondly, well, today it was rainy. So, we're getting into rainy season, which means the hot and dry season is ending. And yesterday we had some big rains after the ceremonies that we had here in Bobo Dioulasso. I'm in the city of Bobo Dioulasso in western Burkina Faso. And so after the ceremonies that took place yesterday, we had big rain last night into the morning and then again this afternoon as well. Yeah, in Burkina Faso, we just had, those of you who've been following the podcast, I'm sure you know that we've been following events and things happening in Burkina Faso in general, that there's a new government here and that government has kind of taken control through a military coup like has happened in other West African countries as well, Niger, and Mali, Guinea, and I think Gabon as well. But in Burkina Faso, in particular, this is where we kind of, as our center in the Kepta movement, have more of a presence. So this is more what we've been reporting on. The president here announced last month that he would be initiating a new or start commemorating a new holiday, which would be the Day of Customs and Traditions. So it was made a national holiday. The children did not have school yesterday. And, a lot of the offices, government offices and things were closed. And there were a lot of ceremonies taking place many of which were kind of just, spur of the moment things put together by traditional authorities in different locations throughout the country. Here in Bobo Dioulasso, they had some ceremonies yesterday morning, which I was not able to attend because I kind of found out about it too late. But I was able to go to a concert yesterday where they were featuring the Dosso Hunter Society as well as some other things. We'll get into that in a second, but the first thing we wanted to show you was where the president had, for the first time of any president of Burkina Faso, visited the National Culture Museum. So I'm going to show you some video from that, and it's mostly in French, but we do have some YouTube automatically generated subtitles there. Just keep in mind that it's YouTube automatically generated subtitles, and it's not 100% necessarily representative of exactly what he was saying, but I think it's good enough to get the gist of it. So we're just gonna get straight to that.
Cohésion sociale, c'est culturel, c'est à nous normalement, c'est à nous de cultiver ça. Et en visitant tout ce que j'ai pu voir ici, les valeurs de solidarité et de cohésion sociale, nous les avons en nous, c'est notre culture. Et nous sommes en train de perdre ça. Et je pense qu'il faut mettre les moyens ici pour vous permettre d'encadrer les plus jeunes. Pour qu'ils puissent comprendre le fondement même de notre culture. D'où est-ce que nous venons? Pourquoi nous avons perdu ces valeurs de solidarité, d'entraide, de cohésion sociale et tout? Il faille qu'on revienne à ça. Nous sommes en temps de guerre actuellement. J'ai vu beaucoup de choses. Rien que la construction des habitats, certaines communautés ont déjà pensé à ça. Si aujourd'hui on appliquait même ça, face à ces hordes-là, on gagnait le combat. L'alerte. Comment est-ce que les gens avaient conçu des masques qui puissent alerter les gens d'un danger? Aujourd'hui, les gens sont assis dans leur village. L'ennemi vient rentrer, ils sont surpris. Si on avait conservé cette culture d'avoir toujours des gens dans des postures autour des villages pour pouvoir alerter, et le masque, c'est du camouflage en fait. C'est du camouflage qui permet à la personne de fondre dans la nature et d'alerter ceux qui sont à l'arrière et les combattants de pouvoir réagir. On a perdu beaucoup de choses et il faille que nous repartons à la source pour pouvoir puiser ces bonnes valeurs-là, pour pouvoir faire du Burkina ce que nous souhaitons, parce que nos ancêtres se sont battus pour nous léguer cette terre-là. Nous ne savons pas comment, mais maintenant, à travers vous, nous comprenons quelles dispositions ils ont prises face à l'adversité, que ce soit naturel, ceux qui venaient pour le combattre. Ils ont pris assez de dispositions. Donc, il faut qu'aujourd'hui, nous puissions nous inspirer de ça, prendre les mêmes dispositions pour que le Burkina existe pour les générations à venir. Donc, cette journée, ça tombe bien, comme vous l'avez dit, c'est la journée des coutumes et des traditions, la journée le mois du patrimoine aussi. Je pense que ce n'est pas vain. Ce n'est pas uniquement spirituel, c'est aussi un mode de vie. Voilà, c'est beaucoup de choses, des valeurs qu'il faut que les gens développent et que le Burkina redevienne ce que nous souhaitons. Merci, félicitations, bon courage à vous.
C'est une journée historique ici au Musée national parce que c'est la toute première fois, selon donc tous ceux qui ont géré donc cet espace, que le chef de l'État visite le Musée national. Et c'est également une visite riche en symboles parce que nous sommes dans le mois du patrimoine qui se tient sous le très haut patronage du chef de l'État. Nous sommes aussi la journée du 15 mai, journée des coutumes et traditions. C'est cette journée riche en symboles-là que le chef de l'État a choisi donc pour venir visiter et encourager les agents du Musée national. Ce qu'il faut dire également, c'est que c'est un message. Parce que quand on dit mois du patrimoine, le message du gouvernement, le message du chef de l'État, à travers cette journée, ce mois du patrimoine qui a été institué et qui a sa deuxième édition, c'est vraiment d'inviter tous les Burkinabés à repartir pour découvrir leur patrimoine, découvrir leurs valeurs, découvrir leurs origines. Et le chef de l'État l'a dit dans son message au personnel du musée, en parcourant ici les allées du musée, que ce soit les habitats traditionnels, que ce soit les expositions, en filigrane, les enseignements qu'on tire, ce sont les mêmes. C'est des messages de solidarité que notre patrimoine nous renvoie. C'est des messages de fraternité. C'est des messages de courage. Parce que quand on regarde les habitats traditionnels, ce qui transparaît à travers les différents habitats, c'est que nos ancêtres prenaient en compte l'aspect défense, l'aspect protection. C'est pour dire aujourd'hui que nous pouvons puiser dans ces valeurs, puiser dans ces savoirs et dans ces savoir-faire pour aujourd'hui définir un chemin authentique d'affirmation de la souveraineté du Burkina Faso, mais aussi les bases d'un développement authentique. Et je pense qu'aujourd'hui, véritablement, c'est une journée de grande joie, de fierté pour le ministère, pour le personnel du musée. Et je pense qu'à travers ce personnel, c'est une journée riche en symboles pour tous les hommes de culture. Et ce que le chef de l'État a fait ce matin, c'est véritablement quelque chose qui restera gravé dans les annales du musée national. Et ça montre aujourd'hui que le chef de l'État, au-delà du discours, est véritablement attaché à nos valeurs traditionnelles, attaché à nos potentialités traditionnelles, patrimoniales. Et ça, c'est quelque chose qu'il convient de souligner.
Wow, that's so exciting. I am truly inspired to see such an amazing move by the government taking this type of stance, something that I remember when I was in Burkina Faso, maybe 10 or 15 years, not 15, maybe 10 years ago. And one of the elders in the community was over 100 years old, and he was just in tears, basically, because he was impressed to see so many people coming back to the traditions, because we oftentimes see our young people in Merita doing all that they can to come to the West, coming thinking that the streets are paved in gold, that it's milk and honey, and not realizing how much value that they have right there in their own communities, right there in their own societies. And for him to be crying to say that he was inspired to see people returning to the culture, but not only just the local people and the people on the ground, but we even are now seeing like heads of state, and for the head of state to make such a move and to recognize this day of customs as a national holiday is just truly inspirational.
Yeah, it was definitely inspiration, and it's probably one of the first times in my life seeing a head of state kind of a little bit more closely, who's really appears to be for the people and trying to do his best for his people, and not just kind of like in it for his own personal gain or ambitions, the fulfillment of his own desires and all these type of things. We did have a question on the chat. Kim Warrior Zul Bukande, hoping I'm saying that right. He was asking, what is your opinion of the Sahel Alliance? I want to just say that, I'm not going to kind of give a direct answer, but I want to kind of give an answer that's in line with where we're going already, but also to just emphasize to the brother that we see his question, and anyone else who's online, please bring your questions. We'll welcome all your questions. What we see with the brother here, Captain Ibrahim Traore, who's in his 30s, by the way, I think early to mid 30s, is a young leader who rose to power through the military, and after a first military coup by one of his superiors, then ended up pushing him out and taking over after that last leader was kind of seemed to be more focused on trying to get help from the United Nations than trying to take matters into his own hands. we've seen in Burkina Faso, for those who don't have the history, you know, when you talk about the Sahel Alliance or the Alliance of Sahel States, which you normally will see is like spelled AES, or Alliance Sahel, Alliance États du Sahel, which is in French, but that would be the AES, would be the acronym representing that for those who want to look it up for themselves. This alliance has been in large part as a response to terrorism that's been happening, or like jihadist terrorist groups kind of, I mean, terrorizing. I mean, when you think of terrorists, you think of terror. I mean, I don't know if we really think about terrorists too much in the West because we haven't really experienced it firsthand, but you have people, armed groups kind of taking over large areas of territory and pushing people out of their villages, or if people want to try to stay in their villages, they end up having to like function under the rule of these groups that are like kind of like invasive, you could say. And so this alliance is in large part as a response to the fact that these three countries of this alliance, being Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, are all former French colonies. And as former French colonies, they are, you know, in large part kind of supposedly under the aid of France. You know, even I mean, as bizarre as it may seem, because these are people who came and took over your country and demeaned you and told you that you were nothing and that they were the ones coming to save you and teach you civilization and all of this type of stuff, somehow find themselves still in a position of power in these countries, and making deals with the heads of state to kind of make sure that they're still able to extract the resources as they need, whether it be like agricultural products or mineral rights, things of that nature. There's many minerals that are abundant in these lands, like gold, silver, copper. Even in Niger is a big source of uranium for France. So, you know, France interest is pretty obvious, but then they kind of make it seem like they're there for humanitarian reasons as well. In any case, they end up kind of with their claws still in these countries. And so for the first time, you're seeing these countries really just coming to terms with the fact like France is not there to help them. The French armies that have been there in their countries in order to supposedly help fight this terrorist activity, they see like either maybe they don't care, maybe they're incompetent, or maybe even they're complicit with these terrorist groups to kind of destabilize these regions in order to continue to exploit resources. Because at the same time, while the terrorist activity is increasing, the mining activity is increasing in areas that have been overrun by the terrorists. So figure that one out. You know, if it's overrun by terrorists, why will you feel safe doing business there? You know, unless you have backdoor deals with these people. So the Alliance of Sahel States was created in response to the fact that the economic group, like the what's called ECOWAS, or the Economic Group of Organization of West African States, which comprises most of the West African states, going all the way from Senegal to Nigeria, Cameroon, and all this, that they were pressuring Niger after Niger was the third or fourth country in the region to have a military coup. They were threatening to invade Niger to restore that elected president. And in order to restore that elected president, then, you know, they're basically having to go against the will of the people of Niger, saying that the Western governmental model is what we support and you guys need to support it too, even though the people of Niger are behind the new military government. They're not opposed to it. They're not fighting to restore the president, but then you have people from outside trying to restore the president. So in response to this, Burkina Faso and Mali said that, we're gonna treat this just like we're part of NATO. If you invade Niger, we're gonna consider it an act of war against us. You'll be having to fight us too. So that really deterred that situation from escalating, because the leaders of ECOWAS did not want to take it there really and create a whole regional conflict. So luckily they weren't dumb enough to really try to pull their card. But these countries have since left ECOWAS and then created their own alliance. Now the alliance is new. In the Kebta, we kind of avoid trying to make opinions about things in terms of is it good, is it bad, what do you do you like it, you don't like it. Personally, it's like a lot of movements that start off where you can see what the intentions are. But seeing intentions only just shows you that people want things to go a certain way. However, it really ends up being the evidence of historically what you see coming out of the movement that will tell you, was it this or was it that? It's hard to talk about it when we're probably less than a year into its existence. But what we can see so far is that, for example, in Burkina Faso, and with all three of these countries, they are rejecting the Western model of government. They're rejecting the Western model of what a constitution is supposed to be like, what laws are supposed to be like, what how the society is supposed to be run. And it's not like we're seeing a complete overhaul of society, but these leaders are strategically reconsidering everything that technically they're not supposed to question. They're not supposed to, say, is this good for me or bad for me because Big Brother in France or Big Brothers in the United States know better than we do, so that we just need to follow their lead because they're the ones who have the guns and the money. So that's what I could say on that, And yeah, do you have anything?
And then into that, when we're talking about, the Big Brother having the guns and the money, but it's these countries that have the resources. And that's where society, at least in the West, we fail to realize. Like, we look at a country like Burkina Faso, where the average person makes less than $3 a day, yet and still all of their resources are being extracted year after year after year. And as it is here in the West, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And at some point, these countries decided to take a stand and draw a line in the sand and say, enough is enough. Like, you can't just continue to rape and rob these countries of their resources while you send all of this monies and wealth back to your countries to build them up, while you leave these other countries in destitute conditions and in shambles. So I'm proud to see someone taking a stance and building an alliance in this manner. In honesty, I thought more African countries would join forces, and this whole notion of having a united Africa is something that we can look forward to, or at least aspire to. But even if it starts with just these three countries taking a stance and say, we will be the example, it gives the other societies, even our own society, something to model after. Because if you think you don't have a voice, you don't think you can affect change, they're showing us that you can. It's not the easiest thing to do, of course, but they are putting themselves out there to say enough is enough, and we want to demand our rights, and we want to take our country back. So if they start out the way that they started, it's great to see. As Kasabez is saying, this is only 1 year in, so it's hard to say, is this good or is this bad? It really is going to depend on how well the values and the principles can be reinstituted and upheld. But if you think about the countries and the people there themselves, it's like this is what we've all been waiting for. We've all been waiting for someone to be able to say enough is enough. And yeah, it's really just an honor to see their courage to try to bring this unity, to bring sovereignty, to bring a change that, again, like the elder was saying, he didn't think he would live to see the day where the traditions were giving a place, a voice. It's like our ancestors are being given their position again. So again, I hope more countries in Africa and even the Western world can look to this as a model, as something that the seemingly impossible is possible.
Okay. Well, what we can see is definitely three heads of state who have agreed, and this is at least three. I haven't really looked as closely into what's happening with Guinea, who is under a similar kind of situation, and why that country is not part of the alliance, even though it's a bordering country. Gabon is not a bordering country to the AES countries, but that's I'm not sure, because even the first coup in Burkina Faso, the guy that took over at first was like, from what I hear, still working with France and kind of like taking power as a representative of France, but kind of trying to make it look like he's for progress. So you'll see different people who are not really, authentically trying to represent the people and still trying to represent these puppet masters. That being said, we have more questions coming in, and we also still have other things we want to talk about. The focus of this is really on the Day of Traditions and the thrust that the brother Ibrahim, or Captain Ibrahim Traore, he's calling himself the president of the transition, and in all of these countries, they're saying that they're working towards restoring a constitutional order and elections. But what we can see clearly is that they're not doing it the way that the so-called democratic community of the world, the Western powers, and so on, are expecting. So we'll see what comes out of that, whether it's elections or something else. But the one thing's for sure is that they have the courage to question the way things are supposed to go properly.
And another thing that we can also recognize is that usually when you see like a coup, or you see a takeover, you see some sort of abrupt change, you see a lot of calamity, you see a lot of fighting, you see a lot of crime and mayhem and death and destruction. But the beauty in this, it's been such a peaceful operation, and that is what the president has just really been trying to ensure, that people in the communities, the people on the ground, are focused on the unification, their sovereignty, their culture, their traditions, all of the principles and values that their ancestors and they know, that has given them their foundation, that has given them something to stand on. But when you take an outside force and allow those powers to come and dominate and take over, you kind of get whatever they're going to give you, and you're just kind of at their mercy. Even when the terrorist attacks were happening in a small section, they called out to France for assistance. They called out for France to come to the defense and to do something about these jihadist groups. But instead of things getting better, they got so much worse, to the fact that when you go to Medita, when you go to Africa, there used to be a time, even in my own lifetime, where you would go and you would never see police presence. You would never see military presence. It was just the most peaceful, calm, warm, inviting place that you could even imagine even existing on earth. And then just in less than a decade, that gets flipped upside down, where now even the people in the villages are being affected and kicked off their land and taken or having to flee because they don't even have police forces. They don't have a military force to even fight back if they wanted to. So you can just tell just the culture of the society is so very different, and they're trying to bring that level of civility back into their lives. But again, when you bring the outside forces in, they're coming with guns and weapons of mass destruction and all of this, and it just keeps the fire burning, and now it just allows that to spread wider and further. And this president is fighting for cohesion, unity, harmonization, principles, and the traditions that have, again, given them their foundation.
Okay, yeah, and when it comes to how this all kind of came about, you know, I'm not an expert on all these matters, but there's two major historical events that happened with regards to things taking the turn in Burkina Faso that they did. First of all, was the I struggle to find the word because assassination doesn't really quite cover it. What they did to Gaddafi in Libya in 2011 and dragging him through the streets and killing him on camera. But from that point, there were a lot of Al Qaeda and what is it, ISIS related groups invited basically to Libya to fight against Gaddafi, and they were armed by France and the United States. And so those guns and then that terrorist element was still there, and that started to spread into Mali, into Nigeria, where you heard about Boko Haram and all these type of groups started to spread out from there. In Burkina Faso, particularly, the other thing that happened is like this Blaise Compaoré, who's kind of like one of the most dubious and infamous characters in African history, because he came to power by assassinating, you know, the brother Thomas Sankara, who was like a revolutionary hero here in Burkina Faso. But Blaise took control of Burkina Faso for like 30 years. And in 30 years, whatever you want to say, but Burkina Faso was this peaceful place that we all used to be able to go and travel freely throughout. And to see now what happened from when he was kind of like kicked out by a popular uprising. And then we had elections and all of this, and, you know, trying to adopt the democratic model, so-called doing the right thing. And then suddenly now we have these problems. So, you know, I'm not trying to say if Blaise wasn't kicked out that things would have been better, because at this point now we have who we have, you know, by the will of the people, you know. Eventually we got to now have the Captain Ibrahim Traore, and he's bringing a new spirit to the country, and we'll see where it goes. It's something that we are really encouraged in the West to try to judge everything that we see and everything that we're looking at, when we don't necessarily know everything that's involved and everything that's required to make things happen. We have another question from the brother Matthew Ruta, asking, why are African nations fighting fire with fire to resist terrorist attacks from rebel militia groups? And also asking about how we feel about Burkina Faso acquiring military vehicles and drones from Turkey and Egypt, and is it necessary? You know, at the end of the day, it's kind of it's just a difficult situation. And in situations like this, you know, you can't necessarily be idealistic about what type of response you're going to take, and making sure to do things like the so-called righteous way or the peaceful way all the time, because we've seen people trying to do that for a long time, and at the end of the day, this is where we are. And I can't really make an opinion on that. I just have to say that, the one thing that's encouraging is that not only is he looking at these technologies that are coming from kind of a Western model, these military destructive technologies and things of this nature, but also for those of you who were on from the beginning and saw the visit of the president to the museum, the Culture Museum, the National Culture Museum in Ouagadougou, that he was also expressing the importance of traditional technologies, traditional knowledge, traditional customs, and for the defense aspect. So he was talking about how there were certain masks that you could use to make yourself kind of more hidden, to watch out for invaders when they're coming. But these type of traditions across the country, a lot of these have been lost. And so where, maybe some time ago you would have that system of defense, now it will be difficult to put that back in place instantaneously. But at least you can work on a restoration of those traditional values and technologies, while at the same time saying, okay, well, if we have to do some things normally we wouldn't want to do, but we're protecting our people, we're just going to have to do it. So, I'm not the one to judge it, because I'm not the one in the position of having 25 million people in the entire country who's depending on you and asking you, how are you going to protect us? And then Matthew Ruto was also asking about Togo's new constitution that eliminates presidential elections. Are the Togo government's motives positive? Again, I don't even want to talk too much about Togo. Togo is another type of place. And, we go there frequently, and usually dealing with the governmental authorities there is always a hassle. It's always a challenge. It's a hassle. And they're very protective of kind of holding things, holding power, keeping power in the same hands. You have a leader who's the son of, what I guess by most Western terminology, we would have called it a dictator, for what he was in power for about 40 years. And now his son has been in power for about 15 or something. I think is going on 60 years of the same family being in power there. And, personally, I've come to over the years try to, like I said, stop being idealistic and look more so at okay, what is the overall impact of these people being here? Because you can look at, okay, you have a country and it's free, there's elections or whatever, but then boom, civil war for 20 years. Togo hasn't gone through that. Certain countries have been at war. Look at Sudan. The whole country's even split. Now there's a South Sudan, and there's still a war in Sudan. So it's, even if you look at the United States and you say, oh, you got elections, but the country's on the brink of civil war over what's going to happen with each election ever since Trump got in the picture. So it's just, it's hard to say, okay, because we're used to and we've always been told that these models of elections and freedoms and constitutions and all of this is the way that things are supposed to be. The one thing that I noticed, or I heard a term used recently that really intrigued me about the United States, like when they first came up with the Constitution, it was considered the Great Experiment. Like they didn't know if it was going to work. They had these big ideas, but they didn't know is it going to work, you know? And maybe we could say that the United States has been stable to a degree for however many years it has. Whatever, you know, the country hasn't totally imploded, even though it's probably just, you know, that's not where we're going right now, okay? But what we can say is that it's not the model that the whole world has benefited from. And so we have to look at, you know, even traditionally before democracy was ever a thing or an idea, that you have kingdoms where kings will rule for as long as they can. You know, if it's 40 years, 50 years, well, you don't look at that as necessarily a bad thing. So as long as he's taking care of the people. So are they taking care of the people in Togo? Could things be better? Could things be worse? I mean, it's a small, very, very, very small country. It's not a huge tourist destination. It's not like a country where a lot of people are just coming and pouring resources into, but they're doing what they can do and they're holding things together. So I can't really hate on them for that.
And, you know, if you think about these new modern models that we have for governance and for rulership, they are really just, you know, as stated, experiments, and they really come to destroy what was already there, what was already in place, and allowing the people to prosper, to grow, and to have their own sovereignty. Allow people to govern however they see fit. You know, if it
I mean, why are we even talking about what we're allowing other people in other places on the other side of the world to do?
We don't even have a voice to.
Like, who gives you the right to say that you guys should be doing this?
Yeah, to give those opinions, because when we look at like the democratic process and we say like every person gets a vote, and we see that what drives that is money. It's like whoever has the deeper pockets, whoever's going to pay enough support to one particular candidate over another one, that's the one we want in office. Because in politics, you've got the society is already divided, because you've got one society pitted against the other part of the society, where there's nothing that's bringing the society together to all unite and stand behind that one ruler. And that is what you really want to govern, is someone who is for everybody. You don't want to have this particular person is in place because these are his interests. These are the people who are supporting him, and this is who he's going to look after. And
then you have half the country like, that's not my president.
Exactly.
Working against everything that he wants to do.
And so that's just a backwards experimental way of seeing that type of government doesn't work, because it keeps everything up and down, back and forth, and so divided. And you can never have peace. You're always going to be at war with somebody, in conflict with someone, because of that dichotomy of how they have that type of government structured. It just doesn't work for society. And even the fact of saying like every person has like an equal say or an equal voice to say what is necessary. You have the person who has
what it takes to run the country.
What was that?
Like, you know what it takes to run the country.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, I have no idea what
we like the way that person looks, or we like the way that person talks, and it doesn't have anything to do with do they know what they're actually doing.
Exactly. Their ability, their values, what they're actually trying to bring to the country. None of that has to do with how that person is going to actually rule. We're just looking at what's in it for me, what's in it for my family or my constituents. And that is just a upside backwards way of governing.
Upside backwards. I'm gonna have to use that. Okay. There's more if questions coming in about the day of customs and is it the step in the right direction. We're gonna actually get more into that a little bit. But also, can African unity be achieved in our modern time? That's the question is a little too vague for me, because what does African unity really mean, and what is the goal? What would be the goal of it? Because Africa is such a big continent, and then you have the African diaspora too, and what will unity mean, and what will it take? Is that a goal? But I mean, I think what we can say is, if we're talking about African unity, we're talking about unity in a response to colonialism, and trying to fight against that and trying to recover from that, and that being a goal of kind of reclaiming ourselves and what our lives are supposed to be. When we talk about traditions, right? What are traditions really about? If we talk about trying to, be a human being and figure out, how do we survive on this planet, and how do we support each other, and what are we even doing here in the first place? What's the point of this thing called life anyway? These are the type of questions that people who came up with traditions and customs were asking themselves for a very, very long time before political agendas came into the mix. People were trying to figure out how to be a contributing part of this existence and fit in harmony with it. That's what the idea of civilization is based on, that you're not just an animal trying to find the next river to drink from and the next mate to mate with, or the next meal or whatever, but that there's more to life. And when it comes to human culture and spirituality, we know that people have investigated for a very long time this whole process of how we come into life, and how and why, and what life is about. That we all come to life kind of born with a destiny and like something to achieve. So when we talk about the traditions of the world, those are the type of questions that they're trying to answer. And now you have modern ideologies coming to say that, like, these are, if you answer these kind of questions, if you talk about these certain things, like, okay, when, like an African family, if you have a new child, the first thing you want to know is, okay, which spirit is this? Which one of our ancestors is coming back in this child? But then modern values will tell you that, you're worshiping the devil trying to figure that out. You see? And so many people have been moved away from this traditional knowledge. But this is the knowledge that every human being literally depends on. Like, our stability is kind of shaken when we don't know, when we're disconnected from it, when we're disconnected from our blood and where it's coming from and where is it going.
And we can see that we are living in an experiment. And when you live in an experimental society, anything goes. Anything and everything is allowed. And the government will allow you to do whatever you want. And that's why people run to flock here, because life apparently seems easier. But if you break those laws, if you break their rules enough, then you get slammed, imprisoned or killed, assassinated for those types of things. But in reality, they've given you the green light to do whatever you want. And traditions don't allow that. Traditions, they have boundaries, they have customs, they have values, and the people know that. They're self-governing. You don't have to have this police force slamming over your head to make you do the right thing, because your culture, the right thing is embedded in the culture. But we don't live in a society in the West like that. So even for us trying to judge what the African countries are doing and how they govern and how they rule and all of that, we don't really have a place for that, because all we know is these modern experimental ways of government. We don't know how traditions used to work and used to function, but it certainly gives us a model to aspire to when you see how stable the societies were in those days.
Yeah, and even today, you can see where even if people maybe don't have as much to eat as they will want, as much to unlimited internet and air conditioning and all these type of things, you have to wonder, are people really happier in the United States or in Europe or in different places in the world where you have modern amenities and technologies and stuff like that, but you don't have cultural and social cohesion, where people don't know even how to treat each other? And you could be a rich person but feel like you want to kill yourself, because day in and day out, the things you have to go through just dealing with the person next to you that you wake up with makes you feel like life isn't worth living. And so there's a value to traditions where it keeps a kind of cohesion in society that we've really lost in the West. And one of the things that we were going to get into is just this aspect of community defense, because we were in this series on community defense, and we wanted to talk about customs and traditions and how it relates to, kind of protecting ourselves, protecting our communities as well. But we're already almost an hour in, and we have not even shown videos of the event. I did manage to get to one event yesterday. I didn't want to be coming to you guys saying like, hey, I'm in Burkina Faso and we had this day of tradition yesterday, and I was not at anything happening. So, I did make it to an event that was really nice. I wasn't able to stay the whole time, but I got a little bit of footage I just wanted to show you guys so we could talk a little bit about that as well. 1 second while I present my screen. Let's see here.
Life can be so sweet on the sunny side of.
Oh, that's our outro. Dang, we're not ending the episode already. Excuse me for that. We'll get back to that outro in a second. It just was queued up. So, this was some of the festivities yesterday. When it comes to this holiday, it's just it was newly announced last month, and it wasn't, I don't think, time to really like plan nationwide stuff and everything. So I think people who are like traditionalists, it was a way for them to really get together in their different areas and express themselves. And I think it's a step in the right direction because it gives people it kind of opens the door for people to have pride in their culture. And this isn't something that's new for the president of Burkina Faso to be introducing this a month ago. Like, I think I watched like a New Year's address, and he was talking about the importance of returning to tradition there. So now, like, they're saying, it's like a month that they're really acknowledging tradition, but yesterday was really the day really to focus on that. And at the kids' school on Saturday, also, that's like a day of tradition. They're having like some special events on Saturday around tradition as well, and different people will get to express their traditional stuff and wear their traditional clothes from their tribes and things of that nature. That being said, the day of tradition really gives people the day of customs and tradition is just, I think, a way to help young people have pride in their culture and their origins, because there's really just like you have in the United States, you have all the social media, you have all the Hollywood stuff, television, French influence, United States influence, and all the media influence that we have. Here we have, not here, we have in the United States, we have many of those similar influences coming in and bombarding young people here in Africa. And so with that being the case, a lot of people are kind of losing their tradition and not really taking pride in it. And I think yesterday I was in my office here, and I heard a song come on that I heard one of our big brothers here play by Ouagadougou, who speaks the language that's kind of local to this area. And the song is about a genie calling on your genies and things like this. And she's in the music video, at the ocean and, kind of acknowledging the waters and things of that nature. And it's a very traditional song. I hadn't heard it played, and then I just heard someone play it 2 times in the background here. And I asked my neighbor here, I was like, well, do you know what this song is about? And he didn't know what it's about. And I said, well, it's about genies. And he's like scared of genies. He's, he thinks that that's, that they're the ones who are just going to lead you in the bush and to your own misfortune and things like that. And it gave me a way to start a conversation with them. So, there's little things like this that we can do to plant seeds and kind of, or that people do to plant seeds. And so it's a way for people like us who really, our lives are focused on reclaiming tradition, to then be, showcasing our stuff too, when everyone else has their time to showcase their stuff, when the traditionalists really get to showcase their stuff. So it was really encouraging. The other thing, no, go ahead, Sidit. I don't want to monopolize the floor here.
Yeah. One thing I hope that we can recognize when we see such footage, it's very easy to just see quote unquote costumes, music, dance, food, people having a good time, enjoying themselves, celebrating all of these things that we're accustomed to in the modern world, in the Western world. But if you have like your spiritual eyes open, if you have your awareness open, you can see it's so much more to it than that. When we speak about traditions, when we speak about, what they're doing, it's like the culture is basically like coming alive, and it's a form of protection. It's a form of a community being able to protect themselves against whatever influences are outside influences, the seen, the unseen, being able to use and work with those other energies to be able to give your community, your family, your society what it needs. So it goes beyond just the food and the dancing and the things that we can see with our physical eyes. There's even a language that's being spoken that, as Kasabez is saying, like you can hear a song. And for us, when we think of song, we just think of dancing or how it makes us feel. But music and traditions is giving a message, it's giving a code, it's speaking a language, it's telling you something that you need to know. It's not for your entertainment, it's for your benefit, it's for your good, it's for your protection, it's to remind you of something, to awaken something within you. So when we talk about culture and traditions, it's just so much deeper and so much more profound than what we can tend to think of from our Western eyes and perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is meaningful, and we talked earlier about how the president was visiting the museum, and he was impressed by the technology of the mask and how it could be used in defense. So now you see someone doing a mass dance. Don't think like just seeing that dance is just for entertainment. Like there's a practical aspect to it too, whether it's something spiritual or whether it's something, what's the word? Even that could be used in a defense situation. Like in the other case, he was talking about how the mask will be hidden to alert people if there's an invader coming. You know, different masks have different purposes, and I'm not really clear on the exact purpose of that mask, but there's a practical aspect. Even the fitness that it takes to be able to do that dance he was doing, if that's the person who you're calling on to defend your community, he's able-bodied for sure. He's not someone who's gonna trip and fall on the battlefield. So the other part was, the last performances that we showed there was from the Dosso Hunter Society, and the Dosso Hunter Society is a very strong group of brothers here in Western Burkina Faso and some of the neighboring countries, and they have like a whole structure of how they put themselves together to protect their communities here in this area. And you'll see that this area, Western Burkina Faso, seem to be one of the less affected by the terrorist activity in the country in general. But every region will have their hunters, and the hunters also are in charge of the defense of the community. So they have their traditional technologies. They have their different, what you call jujus or talismans or whatever that they'll put on to protect them from whether it's poison or whether it's weapons or whatever the case may be, or make them hard to see or invisible, what have you. So there was actually an elder came in with his entourage, and then you saw like the band at some point start to salute him and start singing songs to praise him as well. So there's that aspect of respect too in the culture where leaders come and you'll kind of sing their praises. In the case, I mean, it sounds kind of corny from our perspective, but it's a respect that when you have leadership, you put them up top because that's who everybody's depending on. So nowadays we don't look at leaders like that, and that's why everybody when you're part of something, it ends up being, different factions and people fighting over power and things of that nature, because nobody wants to be feeling like they're below somebody in a structure. But being below somebody in a structure, in a hierarchy, doesn't make you less than. It just means that that's their position, and that your position is what it is, and theirs is what it is, and every position is needed to make the structure function. But we don't look at it that way. It's like saying, like, okay, just because this person's the president and I'm the vice president, that means that he's more important or whatever. But will the president be able to function without the vice president? Or the Minister of Defense or the Secretary of State and all this? Like, it wouldn't work. So every position is needed, and nobody should feel like, oh, their position is not good enough.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because when we see like these Western forces come into play, they may seem all powerful and almighty because they're standing behind these weapons of mass destruction. But the true power, the true knowledge and authority really comes through the culture, and it comes through those traditions. It comes through that process of initiation, and that allows you to elevate yourself to be able to even carry those positions. Like, in reality, nobody really wants to be the leader because of how much responsibility it holds in traditional society. But in the Western world, everybody wants to be the leader or in charge because they think of it as a place of glory. But really, leadership is a place of responsibility. And the more responsibilities that you have, that's more challenging for you. But the modern world has really been diligent in trying to break that transmission of knowledge, to shine these sparkly gold things to make people aspire and want to come to the West or do what the Western worlds are doing. But in reality, that true knowledge, that way of protection, that way of evolving and growth and stability, it has a long history, and it's something that was very stable, that works for society. And fortunately, many people or many societies have protected that with great care and great honor, and they choose to live in such a way very close to nature so they don't lose that connectivity. But when you come out of the villages, when you come out of the culture and you move to the West and you move in a way where you forget that knowledge and you put it to the wayside, now you're just an easy target. You can easily be manipulated. You can easily be dominated. You can easily be taken over. You can easily have all of your resources just given to someone else. But when you have your culture intact, when you have your foundation intact, you're not susceptible or as susceptible to that. So the thrust to bring back culture, to bring back traditions, we really have to give that some serious thought for ourselves, because this day of traditions and customs is really paramount, and should give us all a sense of pride.
Yeah, it's been an ongoing conversation too. You have Black Americans, and interestingly, I just read a question that said, how would our ancestors in Kebtah say to their descendants who claim to be indigenous to the land of their colonial master? We have people, in the United States who really take pride in being kind of like unique or different from people of other culture, people, maybe Black people, African descendants of in other countries and in Africa and whatever, and take pride in a unique, I hear people a lot of times saying we have our own tribe now and things of that nature. And it may be the case. We like to think that pride in where your ancestors come from could be enough of a reason to want to get back to that and see what it is. But maybe for not everybody is that enough of a reason. But I think one thing that should be emphasized is that regardless, even if you don't have African roots or direct African roots or whatever, even if you are from Russia or India or China or South America or wherever you might be from, one thing's for sure, we all born and we all die. And before we were born, there was a reason why we came into this life. And when we die, there's a place that we're going. Let's say we come from someplace and we're going someplace. And where is the knowledge of what that is? Because in the modern world, we're only taught to think about our material comforts. What do we get to eat? What we like? Do we get to be in the temperature that we like? Do we get to drive the car that we like? Do we get to be with the person we're attracted to or whatever? That's not all there is to life. And we have societies that have protected the knowledge of what the aspects of life that we have no knowledge of in the United States. If you feel like you're suffering because you don't have it, you need to go where you can get it. That's pretty much as simple as it is. It doesn't matter whatever your heritage is, because we're all human beings, and there's certain commonalities in terms of what we have to deal with spiritually and existentially that we all have we have in common. We don't have it doesn't matter if you say, okay, this is my language or this is the language of my ancestors or whatever. It's like, okay, if you have to go and do something, go to some place so you can learn something that you need to know, you better go get up and do it, because, personally, I've been on a journey trying to discover some of my ancestry on the European side has led me back to Germany. But I went to Germany, and it's like, you only see Jesus. You don't see any traces, or there's traces of traditional spirituality, but they don't really keep the essence of it. It's more like the costume or the decoration of it without the essence. And so for me, it's just important to be here where I can get culture that I can use to guide my family, that's going to be useful to me in this life and the next. Let's see. There's another question from Matthew Ruta. He's got a lot of questions. I'm kind of being selective here. I'm not reading everything, but he's asking why I use the term defense, which alludes to responding and participating in a fight, but what about not getting involved and not engaging? Couple things. Well, Giziribtah, you have anything for that question first?
Well, again, that whole notion of there's like a time and space for everything. There's sometimes defense is necessary. There's sometimes we're sitting back and allowing someone else to do that quote unquote dirty work. It just is what it is. But even in traditions, when you have to defend yourself, you're defending something. You're not just defending like your pride or your ego or your pocketbook. You're defending something. You're defending like your culture. People don't fight just to fight, just because you stepped on my toe, just because you bumped into me, or you want something of mine.
Some people do. Some people do.
Well, traditionally speaking, like that's not a reason for defense. That's not a reason to fight. If you're going to fight, if you're going to defend something, you better be defending something of value, something of worth. And it is worth fighting for, dying for, when you have a culture, when you have something that you are trying to protect, and something that you would give your life for, because you recognize how valuable is it. it is to you. Is your car that valuable? No. Is your house that valuable? No. Is your girlfriend that valuable? No. You're not going to fight and kill and go to battle with someone over small things like that. But to protect your culture, to protect your civilization, yeah, it's worth it. And it may be time to go to war, to battle, to fight, to kill, to do whatever is necessary to ensure that those things can be protected. So again, that's coming from a place of when you have like awareness of culture, and not to say that I am have all of that, because I'm still learning, but I see it and I recognize like the value of it. And so when I see people willing to do whatever it takes to protect those things, it makes me wonder, like, well, where did my ancestors fall into this equation? How do I bring that type of culture, stability, value, customs, traditions back, and principles back into my life, back into my family, back into my community, back into our society? We see like people are running to the Western world thinking that this is the place to be all. And I'm telling you, like, I can't even go on certain sides of town because after dark, it's just not safe to be there, and how is this supposed to be like the heaven or the place that everyone is supposed to be aspiring to go to? Because there's no culture here. There, anything goes. You can do whatever you want. And those are the things people are dying for that. And it's really just shameful.
Well, let me just first say thanks for the question, and thanks for those of you who asked questions. It's a good question. This one in particular, I think, is because it's not necessarily all just when it comes to defense, just the physical defense. Master Naba used to always say, our battle, it's not a fight of flesh, it's a war of ideas. And before someone gets in their head that they're going to attack you, there's the idea in their head that that's what's the right thing to do right now for whatever reason. So you have to keep that in mind. There's a lot that goes into protecting yourself that doesn't have anything to do with weapons. For example, I was talking about genies earlier, and it just was an aside, but but the brother was talking about how a genie could lead you astray or what have you. Usually anything negative that's going to happen as a result of a spiritual influence is going to be, let's just say it could be prevented by taking care of things a certain way. If there's a spirit that's knocking at your door, wants your attention, and says, "I need something from you," how do you respond to that spirit and say, "Okay, this is what I need to do for you, so I can have you on my side instead of being, and it's not like, it's not something spooky, because that's how we are with each other. If you have a girlfriend, like Giziribtah brought up a girlfriend, if you have a girlfriend and then she needs something from you and then you don't give her what she's asking for, is she going to treat you good? She's not. If you have a child and then you don't provide for that child what the child needs, or even a parent, and you don't provide the parent what the parent needs, or you don't follow what the parent is telling you, guiding you to do, is that parent gonna be there for you when you need them? Maybe they say, okay, he needs a lesson before I can help him out because he's going the wrong way. You see? So on the spiritual level, when it comes to dealing with our ancestors, when it comes to genies and spiritual forces of nature, you have to be in a good position. When COVID came out, when whether it was released from our lab or whatever you want to say, a lot of people were dying. We didn't have people dying in our communities from that. I mean, I don't recall seeing it. When last year we were at our temple, and there were some birds flying around, and I was like, "Wow, look at those birds!" And I was asking later, like, "Okay, what was that about?" And then it came out like actually it was a sign that there's deaths getting ready to happen. And when I got back here to Bobo, man, I heard about so many people dying from this dengue fever. People in our community, a lot of people got it. A lot of people got sick, even went to the hospital and everything. Nobody died, you know. I mean, there was a lot of this. Our neighbor down the street died. People at the school were dying. The secretary of the school was talking about maybe 7 or 8 people in her family died from it. Like, this is just last year. So, you know, there's things that you do to protect yourself that has nothing to do with weapons. The other piece is, you know, in the United States, we have a lot of history of movements for liberation, movements of self-sufficiency, movements of kind of trying to take control of our communities and make sure that we're okay, because we've seen different elements of the society not being protected by the government that supposedly has the job to protect us. So, you know, that's where even a lot of the gangs came into the picture. And I think we talked about that in the last episode with the sister Amina Matthews. If you haven't seen it, you know, go check it out. She's the daughter of one of the more notorious gang leaders, gang founders, actually, here of Chicago, Jeff Fort. And so this, a lot of these gangs came out of the need of young people to like get together and feel like they're taking responsibility for their communities. But what ended up happening is there was a lot of infiltration. There was a lot of kind of like false flagging where there were government agents kind of pretending to be one gang attacking another gang and things of that nature. Like all of the FBI and all of this, what was his name? J. Edgar Hoover was involved in all of this in Chicago, trying to bring these gangs to where they either co-opting them or just destroying them outright. What happened with Fred Hampton Jr., they came and just shot up his house and killed him in the middle of the night, like while he was asleep. Just the police, like the Chicago police, you know, it sounds crazy to hear, but they just ran up in his crib and just killed him and, you know, a bunch of people in his house. So how do you protect yourself in these situations? You know, first of all, there's the spiritual side. But the other thing is that, you know, you need to have a solid core of people who's able to resist the influences that are coming from outside, the influences that are coming from from people who want to stop you from doing what you're doing, because you're always going to have that element. And especially now, after all our experience, we know that there's always going to be, if you're trying to do things that's going against what the system wants you to do, there's always going to be an element, whether it's deliberately injected in there, like the FBI sending an informant or sending a agent or a agent provocateur or what have you, or if it's just the fact that people are coming to you looking to be a part of what you're doing, but at the same time they're influenced by the media, they're influenced by the social whatever experiments going on, and bringing their ideologies to your doorstep. That to me has been probably the biggest threat that we see, is just the influence of culturally that people are coming under. And how do they break that? Like, they want to be better, but they stuck in a way of thinking and don't really see another way to see themselves, to see the world and all of this. If you're an organization that's trying to help people, how do you maintain your values and maintain your traditions with all these influences at play coming to your doorstep? These are all aspects of community defense that need to be at the forefront of our thought process, because if not, before anyone needs to come and attack you physically, you're going to unravel from inside. And then, they've done their job without having to lift a finger, because they keep the propaganda machine going to the point where you won't be able to resist it. So those are some thoughts, and again, Dual, thanks for the question, because it helped bring out some of the closing points that we have for the episode. And I think we're going on an hour and a half now, so we're gonna have to wrap it up. But if there's any other questions, I'm gonna scroll through and see if there's any other questions. And Giziribtah, you have anything else?
Not really. I did want to just touch on that notion of even like the physical defense, because even when we talk about traditions and people physically defend themselves and even have to, say, take a life, even that's done with a level of responsibility, because it's a recognition of like a spirit taking life, death, fighting, all those types of things. Traditional people like take like a vow to do that, and they have to even cleanse themselves afterward because of what they endured in order to offer that defense, in order to offer that protection. So it's not something that they even do and take very, very lightly. It's something that they have to even take a vow and cleanse themselves after that process. Whereas we can even see around the world that there's so much death has occurred where those spirits have not been taken care of. There's so much destruction that is still left lingering in those lands. You can even feel it. Sometimes you can go into areas where it's just very heavy, it's very dark, where you can feel the energy is not resting well. And when those things happen, and traditionally they take care and time to even take care of those spirits, clean the land, clean themselves of that aspect of destruction that took place.
Yeah, I mean, we have a concept in the traditions called violent character of nature. Certain things you get involved in and you do, and there's always a repercussion. So you get involved in violent situations, and it doesn't just happen in a vacuum. Like there's ways that whatever you ended up doing, you end up coming back on you, whether positive or negative. And so, yeah, there's a way to take care of things so that hopefully, if you do have to do something regrettable, which, we all make it our priority not to end up in those situations. First of all, as the brother was saying, but if you do end up in a situation where it's almost like unavoidable, how do you deal with that in a way where at least, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to even talk about, honestly, to me, because it's almost like an imagination. I'm not a soldier or a military person where I've been out killing people, and so I don't even really know where to start talking about that. But you just have to be responsible, and if you ever end up in a situation, you don't really want to take a human life, because then that spirit you'll be the one that did that to that spirit, and that spirit is going to be after you for that, and then how do you kind of help that spirit to go rest or take responsibility for what you did? I mean, there's a whole other process involved with that. So it's not really where we're going today, but we're not necessarily for violence and promoting violence and all of this. But when we talk about defense, we talk about protection. we're really talking about how do we protect ourselves from the influences and forces that are working against us in our communities, and we know that they're present. Um, and that's why I really respect when we talk about what the sister Amina does. And I don't think we really got to talk about it as much. Some of the day-to-day stuff that she deals with. It's not about going out and fighting somebody, but maybe talking to somebody in a good way to where, and I think she told the story of the brother who was getting ready to go to the school and shoot some people up, and she went and talked to the brother and started asking him about his dreams and what his goals were and things like that. That was a way of protecting those people who could have got killed that day, and even protecting the young man who probably would have went to jail or maybe got himself killed that day too. So it's not just about violence. Usually that's the last place we want to go. Because if we end up shooting, we're talking about in Chicago, and we're trying to take a militant approach to protecting ourselves, we're not going to last 5 years, maybe not even 5 months.
Right.
Okay, Matthew Ruta, my brother. Different example of how does one do and prepare and take defense against everyday life situations with others, conversations, interactions, and such. You want to take that one? I mean, everything's not about like defending yourself against somebody else. Most of the time you defending yourself against yourself on the day-to-day interaction, because the person who cuts you off in the street when you're trying to drive, or the person who bumped into you, or the person who was mean to you at the city clerk or whatever, they got their own stuff that they're dealing with. That's not an attack on you, but we perceive it like an attack. But the protection needs to be like, how do we protect our own speech, our own inner peace, our own inner stability, and keep ourselves centered in times of stress and times of conflict. And, I mean, a lot of what we even call conflict nowadays, people will tell you that you're assaulting them if you say that, you don't like the shirt they're wearing. So that's not a conflict isn't necessarily everything someone does that you don't like. But there's different levels of conflict, because when you talk about armed conflict, that's another level. But you're really just talking about a lot of times disagreement, or whatever, someone doing something that gets under your skin. That's not necessarily a conflict already. So a lot is a matter of perspective, and kind of like not letting everything be a big deal to you, when it's really, it's really small potatoes in the big picture of things.
Yeah, the protection that we can offer ourselves is really just raising our quality. And that is the biggest protection that we can offer. Like, we are our own greatest challenge. We are our own greatest place for destruction. Like, we are our own worst enemy, if you will, because it's so easy for us to lose our quality, lose our values, give ourselves an excuse to do the most heinous things, the most evil things, even the thoughts in our minds, the dirtiness that we have in our hearts. All of these things are what we need to be more focused on in forms of protecting ourselves against our own corruptions.
I do, Alcinate. And we're now over an hour and a half. We're at 94 minutes, just about. So if there's any last words, if not, I'm going to play this outro.
We appreciate you all.
Absolutely.
Questions, the interaction.
The whole time, or those of you who just checked in, thanks for watching.
Yes.
And, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, so next time we go live, you'll get it notified right away. And, y'all have a good day and good evening wherever you are. And, this has been another episode of the Sunnyside podcast. Y'all take care.
Life can be so sweet
On the sunny side of the street.
This was really cool to demo.
Still have to end the stream, right? All right, y'all.